First of all, I have to give a shout out to Layla McCormick. She brought me homemade cake, okay? So everyone else, I'm not sure if you're a Christian, okay? I just need to say that. But thank you, Layla, for the homemade cake. It was awesome. Cake. Okay, all right. So anyways, I was in Florida this week, and it was gorgeous. It was nice. It was actually cooler than what it was here, which is funny. But I went down there. My cousin, he invited me a couple weeks ago. He's a contractor in Chicago, and he invested in a home in Orlando that he was going to rent out for the majority of the year, make money off of it, and then vacation there a couple days out of the year. Well, COVID-19 hit, and everyone canceled their reservations. So now he has this gorgeous home that is just sitting there in Orlando, and he's doing nothing in Chicago. So he decided, you know what, I'm going to take my family. He's got 3 adorable kids, and he said, I'm going to go down there. I'm just going to go live there for a couple months. So he went down there, and then he invited some of our family and said, hey, if you're available, come hang out with us for a couple days, and we're just going to stay in the house, and we're not going to go out and do anything. We're just going to stay here just to make sure that we weren't spreading anything. And so we decided that we were going to go down there. So I left actually last Monday, and it was at 3 in the morning. So preached here, had a great time, seen everyone, left at 3 in the morning, got down there, and then got back last night, or actually yesterday morning at 1:30 a.m. So nice, fun drive down there. And this place was incredible. Okay, this home of theirs that they invested in was bought for people that are vacationing to go to Disney and people who are more well-to-do, I guess you can say. So it has 11 bathrooms. It has 8 bedrooms. It has a movie theater. It has a game room, a nice pool, a Mickey Mouse fountain, and theme-based rooms. So one of the rooms was Star Wars, and there was a slide in it. My kids love that. And one was a Mickey Mouse room. And we just stayed there. I'd never left. And it was a lot of fun. And actually, I worked on this sermon when I was down there. And I had this unrest in my spirit the entire week when just enjoying being with my family. And there was nothing necessarily wrong with it, but kind of what Bella was sharing was there was this big weight on my back because of the social injustice that was happening in our culture. And I'm sitting here in a $1 million home enjoying life when all this stuff is happening in the world. And then I start working on this series, this message on what the church is supposed to be. And I know not everyone was here last week, but we talked about what it is to be the church. And I know that a lot of us, we have these ideas of what church is supposed to be. And last week people said, you know, it's a place of encouragement. It's a place of prayer. It's a place where you have fun. It's a place where you hear a dude preach and some worship, which, by the way, was that worship Liddy in the city or what? Wow. Woo. So it was amazing. And so people, they think that that's what church is, and some of that is right. But I believe that in the Word, there's so much more. And we talked about the very first church and what they were about. And then we talked about the very first sermon and how thousands upon thousands of people gave their life to Christ. And they were passionate. And we had this quote. And the quote had something to do with our passion related to our strength in Him. If our passion is weak, our faith is weak. And it doesn't translate. We don't just meet people who accidentally become passionate for God. It doesn't just happen. Like you wake up and you're like, oh, wow, like I'm passionate for God. No, there's growth and there's teaching and there's prayer and there's reading and there's community. There's all this stuff and it wells up and it creates a passion within us. And so we talked about that passion, it grows when we're together, that we are actually stronger together. Strength in numbers, right? That we are stronger. Together, we can accomplish so much. But if we do something alone, we are limited. We're so limited. And so I think about this topic and this series about what the church is, and we've had a nice restart with 11 weeks being off, and now this is our second week that we are back on, and I want us to learn and grow and really know what God's design is for his church. He has so many great purposes for his church, and we see in his word that he had 4 things that this early church was doing. Those 4 things come from Acts 2:42. Does anyone remember Acts 2:42 from last week's message? I said, I want you to memorize this. I want you to know it because this is huge. Does anyone remember Acts 2:42? You can paraphrase. I'll take a paraphrase. Yep, apostles' teaching. Yes. You know, they shared meals, they took Lord's Supper, and what we just said, fellowship. Give it up for Adonis, everyone. He doesn't just win on the wrestling match, he wins in church. Okay. All right, so here's the thing. Those are the 4 things that they did. And we see here in Acts 2:42, all the believers devoted themselves. We talked about that word devotion to apostles' teaching. Remember, at this time, they didn't have the New Testament. So when they had the apostles' teaching, that was all they had. They didn't have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So they learned from what they heard, and then they got it down in letters. So the apostles' teaching, fellowship, sharing in meals, which includes the Lord's Supper, and prayer. And so all this comes back to this idea. We have a lot going on in this world. We have a lot of things that some of us, we have never even thought about. We've never witnessed. And so I've been getting this question all week. What do we do? Winston, what can we do? We got this social crisis. We have this thing called COVID-19, and this is a crazy, crazy pandemic. And we have riots, we have protests, we have good protests, we have a couple bad people that are destroying things, we have a couple really bad cops, we have some political gain in all this. There's so many things happening. What do we do? And so I was thinking about that all week. And then I started working on my sermon, and I've had this in place now for a couple weeks, and no idea that this would be the topic at this time during the things going on. And so I believe where we start is becoming people of prayer. Now, it doesn't mean we don't act upon that like further, but where we start is going to our Father and declaring and asking and requesting, God, can you help? Can you be with us? Can you give me wisdom? Can you give me ideas and actions? Can you be with our politicians? Can you be with the people that are suffering these injustices? And we go to the Father because we see in the church, the early church, prayer was not something that was just casual. It was their DNA. Prayer was not just a transition in between songs or to end a service or praying at a meal. Prayer was who they were. And it changed things. I love the quote by James MacDonald. He says, before prayer can have breakthrough, the prayer must have breakthrough. Guys, I think about us, and I've heard this so many times, I don't know, I've been praying this for a year, 2 years, and I haven't seen the results that I thought, and some of it's because God is working, and He's maneuvering things, and He's going to take good out of bad, but most of the time it's because there hasn't been breakthrough in that person's life, and they treat God more like a light switch. Oh, I think I care about you now. How about you affect my life now because I want you now? I won't change these things in my life. Don't ask me to change these struggles and these battles, but now I want you to work over here. That's entitlement. Feeling like, oh God, you owe me something. And we treat him more like the illustration that we've heard before, like a genie. Hey God, give me what I want, what I think I need, instead of having a relationship with him. And if our prayer life is suffering and all we have is the prayers at church or in a life group, then we probably are not people of prayer. Guys, it's something you have to be intentional about. But before we can see those breakthroughs, we must have breakthrough. Because prayer is a game changer. Prayer is something that takes us from a level here to that next level in our faith. And the early church, they knew that. They knew that God, He didn't want their religious nature. He didn't want their attendance. He wanted them. He wanted relationship with them. You could be here every Sunday, and the prayers you have with your life groups or in a service, and if that's all you have, then you're not following Christ, and you don't have much of a relationship with Him. And Jesus is saying, you need to come to me and talk to me and have that intimate relationship, because that's what I want. So these early Christians, they knew that, and they watched it. They watched it with Jesus. This is one of my favorite verses on prayer. It's in Matthew 7. It says this. Jesus is talking in the Sermon on the Mount. He's talking about prayer. Thousands of people are there. And people are wondering, okay, what's prayer about? He said, ask, it'll be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and him who knocks it will be open. What man is there among you who, when his son asks for a loaf, will give him a stone? You see, Jesus, He's speaking some truth here, and He's saying, in order to see some change, some transformation, you can't sit on your hands. There needs to be an action, and the action is ask. We don't have because we don't ask. It's to seek. Many of us will take 5 steps, turn around. Sometimes God will take us on a journey. Sometimes what you're asking won't just be around the corner. Sometimes it might be 10 years down the road. Sometimes it might be tomorrow. We don't know. Seek. And then there's the last one, knock. You know, we talk about cleave and sunder, right? He's knocking at the door. You know, so many people, they hear the knock. They know He's there, but they choose not to answer, or they choose to sit on the door and listen from the outside. But there's an action there. You got to get up, you got to go, you got to open the door, and you don't just look at Him, you got to invite Him in. You got to invite Him in. So many of us, we hear it, and because we hear it, we think we got it. You need to open the door, and there needs to be change. When I was your age, I thought following Christ was attendance, and I thought it was giving an image off that you thought someone else would want you to be. But when Jesus got a hold of me and showed me that it was transformation, that He wanted every single piece of me, that's when the game changed. And that game changed when I started having a relationship with Him and talking with Him. And these early disciples, they heard from Jesus that there is some action steps to prayer. It goes on to say this in the other 2 verses of this section, in verse 10 through 11. Or if he asks for a fish, He will not give him a snake, will He? If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who's in heaven give what is good to those who ask Him? I love this illustration. We all have some people in our lives that aren't good people. Let's just say it. And unfortunately, some of those people are our parents. Some of them are our brothers and sisters, our uncles and aunts. Occasionally, though, they give gifts. They do a nice thing. Sometimes they don't do it to you, they do it to other people, and you witness it. What God is saying here is there's some evil dudes in this world. There's some evil people in this world, and even they do good things occasionally. How much more will your Father do for you? So many of us, we think of God as a person hoarding back His blessings. I'm not going to give that to you. Look at what you've done. Look at the sin in your life. I ain't giving that to you. He said, I'm a generous Father. I want to give. I want to pour my blessings off in your life. I want to give you these things. I want to give you joy. I want to give you friendship. I want to give you happiness. I want to give you down the road a family. I want you to be provided for. This is our God. He wants to give generously. But so many of us, we don't seek, we don't ask, we don't knock. And if He doesn't live up to what our standards are, what we think He should do, then we give up. Hey, you didn't save my relationship with my mom, so peace. Hey, you didn't turn around my dad and his addictions. I'm out. That guy, he never even liked me. He used me. And we think there's something there that, okay, you didn't do what I asked, so I'm done. When God has something even bigger than that. He's not just to be someone who answers our every request. Again, he wants a relationship. And when hearing that last song, and Skylar, she killed it, right? And she's singing, Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. And I'm looking at the background slide, you know how they have the movement, it's just Jesus, right? And actually when I was talking to the middle schoolers a little bit ago, I had this moment. And I was just walking up to stage, and I was going to preach in maybe 30 seconds. And I was seeing that slide, and she's singing, Jesus, Jesus, exactly like that. And I'm just like, everything is about Jesus. It was just this moment. Now, I know that intellectually, but there's a difference with letting that go to here. It's all about Jesus. And he showed them what prayer's about. But he didn't just show and say it. He revealed through these actions. Look at this. Luke 6:12. It says this. Jesus went to the mountainside to pray. He spent the night praying to God. Very subtle verse. You probably have read over it. I read over it many times. But this verse is a game changer because you read it. Yeah, he went to the mountainside to pray for the whole night. I've witnessed that. I was in Haiti in 2009, and I was building this roof for a church that was, the church roof was destroyed in a hurricane. And so I was building it back, and I was with this guy, and he was amazing, and it was coming up to the weekend, and they worked a lot. So he looked at me and said, hey, I'm not going to be here for the next 2 days. I was like, okay, what's up, man? And he pointed. And I looked over, I'm like, okay, what do you mean? And he said, to the mountain. And I looked, there's a mountain, and if you know anything about Haiti, 2/3 of the island is mountainous. So we actually were in a valley in the city of Gonaïves. There's mountains everywhere. And he said, I'm going to the mountain. I said, okay. He said, I'm going to the mountain for 2 days to pray. And I was like, really? He said he wasn't taking food, anything. He was just going to go and pray to God on the mountain. At that time, I was still new in my faith. I was like, what in the world? Then I read about it. Jesus did it. Jesus separated himself from his disciples. They knew he was on the mountain. They knew he spent the entire night on the mountain. What do you think he was doing? I think some of the most amazing moments and interactions were on that mountain. Sometimes the mountain is not as complicated as we think. So the disciples, they didn't just hear it from Jesus, he showed them. Colossians 4 says that you must be devoted to prayer. Ephesians 6 talks about praying in the Spirit on all occasions in all kinds of ways and requests, with this in mind, to be alert, always keeping on praying for the Lord's people. And so I was thinking about this, and I found this quote, and it just made so much sense to me. It says this, our prayers may be awkward, our attempts may be feeble, but since the power of prayer is in the one who hears it and not in the one who says it, our prayers do make a difference. It made sense to me because one of the scariest things for people to do is to pray. If I went around and I said, hey, I want to have you close out our service on stage in prayer in front of everyone, I guarantee majority of people in this room would say, nope, not me. Like, let me look around. People are already getting awkward when I see someone like, okay. If I asked you to come on stage, a lot of people are like, no. There's something awkward about it for some of us, right? There's something scary. They're going to judge. Is my prayer bad? We think so much about it. We think too much. And what God desires from us in prayer is to be real, to stop being fake. And so I just want to say this, where we start in prayer is to not be fake. I've never met someone who was like, man, I love fake people. Like, I just really connect with people who are so fake. Like, they're this way at school, and then they're this way at church, and then they're super bougie, and then, they glowed up this year, and so they think they're awesome. Someone taught me that phrase last week. And so I think about that. I've never met someone who's just like, oh, I love fake people. They're the best. It's because they're not who they are, right? Then why are we fake with God? Why are we fake with God? Why do we try to pray what we think He wants to hear instead of just praying what's on our heart? If our issue in our heart is the social injustice, pray for the people involved. If our issue is that she's been talking behind our back and it hurts you, pray. If it's because you're worried about a future event or a relationship or a family issue, pray about it. I say this all the time. I would love for everyone in this room to care about the orphans in Africa. I would love that. That'd be amazing. But the reality is, most people aren't thinking about the orphans in Africa all the time. We're thinking about our tests. We're thinking about the guy who hurt our heart. We're thinking about the things our mom and our dad are fighting through. Like, those are things a lot of us think about. And I don't know about you guys, my most impactful moments of prayer are when I'm just trying to be real. And sometimes that's me even being kind of angry and confused. And that's when God responds, because I'm not trying to be something that I'm not. So God is telling us, be real in prayer. Don't be fake. Because that's when God is going to start moving in our life, because we're who we're supposed to be. And so I think about this, and again, prayer is a tough thing, guys. But it's a place to start. And the church, they got this. They knew the power of prayer. You want to move this culture? You want to speak for the people who have been pushed away and devalued? Where we start, the very first place we start is prayer. Is going to the one who can do immeasurably more than any single person in this room, and requesting and pleading with him, and maybe fasting and doing prayer walks and starting with God, who can change hearts. And maybe he might lead you to do something else, to do something more courageous, to step out. But that's where we start. I love this quote by Ian Bounds. He said, "He who is too busy to pray will be too busy to live a holy life." If we're too busy for him, we're not going to fall into holiness. I'm too busy for that. It's not going to equal a strong relationship with God. Because I don't know where everyone is, doubt or on fire, excited or just here for a girl or boy. I don't know where you are. But in order to see real life transformation, it will take sacrifice. You will have to give something up. And I've witnessed it here. I would love to say that it happens all the time and people always pick the right road, but the reality is that's not true. There's some people that I know who I love who could have been kingdom movers who are better throwing a softball than reading their Bible. There's some people I know right now who are better on a basketball court but never got connected in a life group. And I see the results of some of that stuff. And I would love to say, oh, they come around and everything works out. But the reality is what you invest into, you're probably going to be good at. But in order to invest in one thing, something else is going to take a hit. And usually that's the relationship with God. And so God says, I want a relationship with you. I want to talk to you. I want you to pray. But if we're too busy, it's not going to equal out a strong relationship with God. If we live weak, then we're going to witness weak prayer. I love that we live weak because we pray weak. Just like last week talking about our passion. If we have weak passion for God, we're probably going to have a weak prayer life. And no one's going to twist your arm. I'm not going to throw you on the stage and say, you better pray. It's going to have to be you. And I'll go home and I can't see into your heart. Only God can see into your heart. So I'm begging you to ask those questions. Where you at? But just something happens when men and women fall on their knees and cry out to God. Something happens. I have up here actually a couple examples of that. These are people that became men and women of prayer, and they invested their life in prayer, and they changed the world. I already mentioned E.M. Bounds, but E.M. Bounds, he was born in 1835, and for 40 years, he woke up at 4 a.m. and prayed for 3 hours, from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. every single day. He actually has a book he wrote called The Power of Prayer. It's my favorite book on prayer I've ever read. I've actually given it to our worship pastor here, Aquila, and I've given it to Dwayne Smith, some other people on staff. We've read it, and it's changed our lives. There's another person, Edward Payson, ministered in the Second Great Awakening. He was said to have worn grooves in his wood floor next to his bed. And when you looked at his bed, right next to it, there was 2 spots where his knees had worn grooves because of his 2 to 3 hours of prayer every single day. Then there's this other guy, John Hyde. He left for the mission field in 1890, and it said that he would stay face down before God until he got an answer. It'd be a day, 2 days, 1 hour, 1 minute. He would stay face down before God until he got the answer that he wanted. Then there was another guy, Adonia Judson. He started this mission in Burma in Southeast Asia, and it said that he would pray 3 to 4 hours a day. John Welch, 4 to 6 hours a day. John Fletcher, he led a movement in the Methodist Church. It said, when reading about him, that he would pray leaning on his wall in his bedroom. And the wall was stained with his tears and his hands by being there so much. It said that he would pray for hours upon hours for movement. These people were game changers. I mean, some of them, they were the greatest people in social injustice you could find, entering into communities that wanted to kill them, and some of them eventually died for what they believed. But if we are going to be too busy to cultivate a prayer life, then we're going to be too busy to make a change. So guys, as we talk about church, and we talk about what it is that church is, and we talked last week how it's all about us being together, that we are made to be together. We are made to pray together. We are made to pray. And I don't know where you are, but if that's something that you need to experience in your life, there's no better place to start. We have a God who, as we said, makes the darkness tremble, and he's a way maker, and he's moving even when we don't see it. So I want to encourage you guys, wherever you are, don't wait. Don't wait to become a person of prayer. On that note, let me pray for you, and we're going to worship one last time. Father God, thank you so much that we get to be here. We get to talk to you as a group. Sometimes I wish we could just talk to you the whole time, but God, I know sometimes people would be deterred by that. They would rather do other things, and so I pray that we all can move towards a heart of prayer, a heart that is so reliant upon you that we're like some of those people, that we stain our walls with our tears because we're so embedded that we need you. That we wore grooves in our carpet or wood floor because that's just a place where we are. That we put down a controller, a phone, a TV, and we just spend time with you and don't feel forced but are excited about it. God, thank you. I'm so thankful for you. Thank you for Jesus. It's all about him. Be with our country. Be with the social injustice. Father, be with the families that are hurting. Families that have been victims. Father, we know that we can't do this on our own. It's all you. So let's sing out to you. Let's praise you this one last time tonight before we go into groups. We pray this all in your name. Amen.